Alright, let's go ahead and get started. So in this tutorial, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to use the Bloomberg add-in in Excel to actually collect some real-world data, both historical and current. So the first thing that I'm going to do when I open up my Excel document is go over to the Bloomberg tab, which I've already done. Now, one thing I want to note is that the only way you're going to be able to access this Bloomberg tab and use the functions that you see here is if you're on a computer that already has Bloomberg installed, or the Bloomberg terminal installed. Otherwise, when you actually do what I try to show you here in a few seconds, you're going to get some NAs, or you might not even be able to access this tab. So that's the first thing. You can only use what I'm about to show you when you have access to a Bloomberg terminal and you're using Excel on that terminal. Alright, so that's the first thing that I needed to state. Now, one other point I should note is that in order to access any of the data that we're going to be accessing, you need to be logged into Bloomberg. Now, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I want to show you is how to use the spreadsheet builder. And the spreadsheet builder is what we use when we want to identify historical data in Bloomberg and download it very, very quickly. So you don't have to actually go to Bloomberg, short of logging in. You can just come to Excel and do it that way. So when I click on the spreadsheet builder, I'm going to either use the blank data table or the historical data table. So let's just go ahead and use the historical data table. First, I'm going to select the securities I want. So you have a bunch of ways that you can sort for securities, or you could just type in the ticker symbol of a particular security. I'm going to go ahead and use Tesla, just because I've been beating up on them in class recently. I'm also going to include, let's say, Ford US equity. So I type in their ticker symbol, select their ticker symbol, and now I click Next. Next, I need to select the data that I want to collect about these companies. So I'm going to go ahead and look at their fundamentals. I'll pull up some of their Bloomberg fundamentals, and we'll say, let's get some ratios. So I'll just go ahead to Assets, and we'll select Total Investment Assets, Return on Assets, let's say Total Debt to Total Assets, and let's get the Current and Quick ratios. Alright, that's that. Next, we need to set the time period over which we want to collect our data. I'm going to move this back to 2013, let's say January 1st of 2013, and this today box is checked. That tells the computer, obviously, let's get all the data from this date forward to today, which is February 1st of 2019. And we're going to actually change this from daily to, let's say, quarterly, and see what we get. Alright, so that's it. Next, we see more or less a mock representation of what our data is going to look like, and we can transpose this if we want to, or we could change the starting cell if we really want to. So let's say I want to put this on A1. I can do that. Last step, actually, let's sort this so that our newest data is first. And now we're going to go ahead and click Finish, and we get our data. I'm going to move this around so you can see it more easily. So here's our start date. Here's all of the information going forward from each quarter. So we start in March of 2013 going forward. So this would be quarter 1 of March, and quarter 1 of 2013, and quarter 4 of 2018, which is the most recent data we have. And here's all of the variables that we selected. Notice here that it has the data for both Tesla and Ford. So here's Tesla's return on assets over the fourth quarter of 2018. Here's Ford's return on assets over the fourth quarter of 2018. And these obviously are going to be in percentage terms. Now, a couple things I should note when you see this stuff. First, this is Tesla's ticker symbol in Bloomberg. So if you want to look up information on Tesla, this is their official Bloomberg ticker symbol, which will be important for us later. Same thing with Ford. Next, these variables, these are the variables that we're going to use if we want to collect any information. So if we want to use an actual function itself to collect say, the current value of Tesla's quick ratio. We're going to actually type in exactly what you see here. We'll go ahead and do that in a few seconds. But now, let's move on. Let's actually take a look at the function builder. And I'm going to go ahead and open this up in, we'll say, the third sheet that we have here. So the next thing I want to show you is how to use the BDH and BDP functions, which will allow you to collect some either historical data or the current data on a particular variable for a particular security. Let's use the BDH function, which is going to allow us to collect historical data for any security that we might want. I'm going to double-click BDH, and I'm going to search for the security that I want, say Tesla again. I'll double-click, and now this BDH function is going to allow me to pull data on the one-day change in the share price, so the one-day return. Then it's already default set to the price as of the last trade, as of the last trading day or today. But let's go ahead and get the return, the daily return, and the price at the end of each day. And I'm going to hit the tab button to go to the next cell or the next option, and I'm going to input the start date that I want. And the start date I'm going to set to, let's say, October 18th of, we'll say the 1st of October in 2018, and we'll make our end date by hitting the tab button. We'll say it's today. And we can just ignore this stuff. These are options over here in the override. And here we have exactly what we want. So notice here that, I'll move this out. Notice here that we have some blanks, or some issues with this, and this is a bit of an issue. If we convert some of these, what you see here, we have some dates, which tells us that something has gone on here, and truth be told, I was messing around with this particular sheet before I started this video, and I apparently set some of these to date format. So if I set it to number format by going up here and selecting the number, now you can actually see that we have all of these corrected. Now, notice here that we have the share price of Tesla in the C column and the one-day return in the B column. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to insert a row, and I'm going to add some headers here. So now if we want to sort the information we have here, we can just go up to sort and filter and sort based on oldest to newest. So now we have our return on this date, which is incomplete because the day is not over. It's actually only 12:47 in the afternoon. And we do have our last price as of this date. And we also have all of our historical returns. So this is very useful if you want to collect some data on a particular security, just some historical stock return data. Alright, that's that. Now let's go ahead and get some current data using the BDP function under the function builder. So I'm going to go ahead and again select Tesla, and this time I'm going to get the, we'll just get one thing that we've already pulled. So we'll say the one-day change, and I'm not going to worry about this override. I'm just going to click OK. And now, because the return has changed, obviously there's a difference between our one-day return as of when I pulled this data 10 or 15 seconds ago and the one-day return now, since we're still within trading hours, normal trading hours. All right, so that's that. That's how we use the functions that are listed under the commonly used functions, the BDH and the BDP. There are a ton of other functions you can use to pull very specific data, but I'll leave that to you guys to mess around with. The next tool I want to show you how to use is the BQL function. And the BQL function, I'm going to go to sheet 2 just so we can see how this works. The BQL function allows you to essentially look up a particular variable for a particular security. And so again, let's just say Tesla. And let's go ahead and add Ford to the mix, and what the heck, we'll add Apple. Now we need to add our fields, and we can do a couple of things, but what I've gone ahead and done is I've pulled some variable names for 4 particular variables that might be of interest to us. Total debt to total assets, total investment assets, and then 2 others that are less commonly used. In fact, I really just pulled them at random. Now, one thing that we can do, if we want to, let's say, collect information or up-to-date information for a particular set of securities and we know the variable names, is we can actually go ahead and highlight the variable names, click Select, and go ahead and click Execute. Actually, let's go ahead and click one of these down here and click Execute. So notice what happened here. When I highlighted all 4 of these, initially it wouldn't let me pull the actual data for those 3 securities that we really cared about. However, when I selected just total debt to total assets, or cell E4, or this variable, it did pull that data. So one thing that I should note is that some of these variables, they will have missing or NA values. Really the variables that you're probably most familiar with from our Intro to Finance class or accounting classes, those are going to be populated most frequently. So total debt to total assets, that's a very popular ratio that we care about. Total investment assets, if I were to look that one up, we would have that. But some of these others that are less common, we actually don't have data for. Now, allow me to show you how to use some other techniques to pull some data. So I just used the BQL function by clicking up here in the ribbon. But what we can do is actually directly type in equals BQL and look up the value for some specific variables. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to type in equals BQL, and I'll type in the ticker symbol, or select the ticker symbol that I want. And just to show you this completely, these are our 3 ticker symbols. So like I said, we want to make sure that our ticker symbol in Bloomberg is exactly this when we're looking up Tesla, exactly this when we're looking up Ford US equity, and exactly this when we're looking up Apple US equity. Notice the reason we do this is because there are multiple securities that Tesla has issued, so it has one set of US equity, common equity, but it might also have a number of bonds outstanding. So let's go ahead and use the equals BQL function, and I'll select Tesla. And I'm going to put this in $sign so that we lock in this particular cell. And I'm going to select the variable I want, and I'll keep that. Notice here that we have an NA. That tells us that there's no data available for this particular variable for this particular security. If I copy down this formula, however, what you're going to see is that we do in fact have data for total investment assets of Tesla and the debt to total assets ratio. So that's 40%. So this is in percentage terms. If I want to do the same thing for Ford and Apple and get those values, one thing I'm going to have to do is delete the $sign and copy this formula over. And I'm also going to have to put a $sign in front of the C variable to indicate we want to lock in the C column. And I'll copy down this formula. So again, we have complete data here for these two variables, and now I'm just going to copy over and do the same thing. And so we should have complete data for these two variables for Apple. So that's that. We can pull real-time data for any company we want using the BQL builder or the BQL function. Now, you might be wondering how I actually found these variables that we use when we want to pull the, let's say, look up data using the BQL function. It's actually pretty easy to find specific variables that we want to include. And to do that, all you're going to do is go up to the Find Fields button and search for the various fields you want. So let's say we want to look up the return on a particular stock. Well, all we have to do is type in return here, and we'll get a number of return variables that we can use. So feel free to pick the one you want. So let's say we want return on assets, and we also want, let's say, some other type of return. Let's say return on common equity. That's another popular ratio that we care about. What I can do is output them into our spreadsheet over here, and I can tell the computer that I want them put vertically, or if I select horizontal, it's going to output them horizontally. So I'm going to say vertically because that appeases me. So here we have the variable names, or the specific variables for return on assets and return on common equity. And again, we can just go ahead and use the BQL function and look up the return on assets of Tesla. There it is. So that's negative 3.34%. Remember, this is in percentage terms. That's one thing that you always need to be mindful of with Bloomberg. And then also we could look up the return on common equity of Tesla. And there it is, negative 21.31%. Tesla borrows heavily, obviously. All right, so that's that. So there is only one other thing that I really wanted to show you, and that is how to actually pull this data for returns from other sources, because let's say you're not working in a lab that has a Bloomberg terminal. That could be a serious issue to you because you might not be able to pull return data if you don't know where to pull it. So the other resource that we commonly use when we want to pull return data and we don't have access to the Bloomberg terminal is actually going to be Yahoo Finance. And so I'm going to jump over to Yahoo Finance and show you how to import some data. So finance.yahoo.com, and let's get the Tesla ticker symbol, so TSLA, and we just select it. Alright, so now we're on the Tesla webpage, and we have a couple of options here. We have all their dashboard statistics, but if we want historical return data for Tesla, all we do is we go over to historical data, and we're given some specifications. So right now, if we wanted to download this data, we'd be pulling 1 year worth of daily data, and that should be good enough for our purposes. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to change this, though. If you want to change it to weekly data, you just change this from daily to weekly and hit apply, and you'll see that the data changed. Now we go to daily and apply that, and I'll download the data. And now we can just go ahead and download the data. Here it is. So here's all the data we need to be able to calculate a return from Yahoo Finance. So we have the open price for every day, every trading day over the last year, the high, the daily high, the daily low, the closing price, and the adjusted close. So adjusted based on dividends, share splits, etc. So this is actually what we're going to use to calculate the return. And then obviously volume is number of shares traded during the day. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and actually add a return variable here. And then I'm going to sort this so that I have the most recent day of day on top. So right now we have our oldest date in row 2. I'm going to change that by going up to the Sort and Filter tab, click Filter, and click Newest to Oldest. Now I can calculate a return, and we'll have the return for the most recent day, so today, up here, and then going downward we'll have the older returns. So our return formula that we're going to use is just equals our adjusted closing price as of today minus the adjusted closing price as of yesterday divided by adjusted closing price as of yesterday. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and copy that formula down by double-clicking in the bottom right-hand corner. And I'm going to convert this to a percentage term, and I'm going to take it out by double-clicking this button, and this will give us out to the basis points, so hundredths of a percentage point. So here we go. Here's our returns. Now, just to show you how accurate this data is, I'm going to take these columns and I'm going to copy them over to our other spreadsheet where we pulled that data from Bloomberg. And I'm going to paste it and unbold it. And so now you can see that if I were to, let's say, copy and paste this data over here right next to the Tesla data that I pulled from Bloomberg and move it down, it's exactly the same. I mean, we get the same data, it's just we can use two different methods to pull that data. So that's another option that you can use. But that's really all I wanted to show you in this quick, or not too quick, video. But if you do have any other questions on pulling data and calculating returns, please feel free to contact me or talk to me in class. With that, I'm going to wrap up.